Welcome to the show, everybody. On this episode, we unpack ego, and Al brings a very interesting take to it. We talk a lot about his point of view on it, and we talk about the good sides and the bad sides. The things that I want you to take away is that it's not always a bad thing. You know, sometimes you need some ego to get up and knock on that next door after you've gotten a bunch of no's. That takes some ego, some confidence. So listen to how we unpack it. I think we cover a lot of interesting ground in the show. I hope you get a lot out of it. Follow us on social media. Share this with a friend if they're in sales and you think that they might get some value out of it. And if you're not sure where you are on the DIS or C scale and you want to find out, shoot us an email, assessment, at salesthrowdown.com, and we can get you hooked up. Thanks a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. In the D corner, we have Clint the Cleaver Bigelow. In the I corner, we have Al the Gambler Daniel. In the S corner, we have Nan the Promoter Foreman. In the C corner, we have John Small Mountain Hill. Let's get ready to throw down!
Welcome to the show, everybody.
Hey.
Today, we are talking about something that's super important.
My favorite subject.
It is, right? We're talking about ego.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things you got to have some of it inherently, right? If you're gonna walk into an office and say, "Hey, you should pay me to do this thing that you're already paying someone else to do, but I'm going to be better," that is inherently an ego-driven conversation. But you can go too far.
Yeah. Well, wait a second. Let me stop you. I don't think you're completely on base with what ego really is.
Enlighten me.
Coming
go
from the
ahead.
most egotistical.
So, hold on. Before we do
what
this,
is ego? Let's give the definition.
Yeah,
right?
fine.
I got
wrote it, me too.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Read
All
that
right, go
shit.
ahead.
Go ahead, doctor.
Doctor.
Let's talk about this.
Doctor.
So if you just Google ego and you're looking for just the definition, first thing that pops up is the Wi-Fi, but I'll cut that off. A person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. Okay. Now, the psychoanalyst, the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious and is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity compared with id and superego. Right?
Okay.
So where I go with that is when we hear the word ego, we automatically conjure up the picture of the asshole, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
course.
Clint.
Yeah.
But that's not true. That really isn't, because
Totally not
Thank you.
exactly.
when you trace it back to where it came from Sigmund Freud, right?
Mhm.
You know, he was a psychoanalyst, the turn of the century, and Freud, whether you agree with him or not, it's just what he postulated was that we had this somewhat reptilian brain, and we really do. The thing that just drives us to eat. I'm hungry. I need to feed myself. But then there's a middle ground in your limbic system that says, if I'm sitting in a meeting, right, and I get hungry, I don't just get up and go to the kitchen and make a sandwich.
Well, some of us don't.
Okay. The psychopath does, right?
Yeah.
Because he misses some of this, right? But you see where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
This is that middle brain that allows you to have a reality check between your wants and your desires, right? And then there's the superego that sits beyond that, says, that deals with morality and other things. This is just your practical side of yourself that says, what's my identity and how do I express myself in any given situation?
Okay.
So chew on that for a second, and there's more to come.
Yeah, I mean, I can't
No.
tell you how many personalities that I deal with that literally I sit in meetings with and I think, man, your ego is so strong that you're willing to do that, right?
What do you mean? Can you give an example?
It could be like, ignoring me or like texting on your phone. Like I'm in the middle of a speech, right? And you're texting on your phone or you're typing on the computer. And I think, damn, your ego is so strong that you're willing to just blow me out of the water because whatever you're doing is more important. To me, that's ego.
It's funny to me that you label that ego because I don't think of that as being ego.
And I agree. I
What do
think
you
that
think it
I
is?
think that's lack of ego, right? Your self-worth. You literally have that's where my desire to do this overrides me being social, normal, appropriate.
It's
Right.
interesting that you guys have a completely different take on ego than I do. Because I see
Well-
when I hear ego, I hear cocky.
Well, when I hear
Instantly.
ego, when I hear ego, I think you're only thinking about yourself. So it doesn't have to be someone that's really like you, a really domineering person. It can be a person that I'm thinking of, just a girl that is so overly concerned with herself in a negative way that she can't even get beyond it. So it's not always I'm wonderful. It's the only thing that's happening is what's happening in my world,
Okay,
and I can't focus on someone else.
But let's don't confuse this with narcissism. All right.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
don't confuse this with other personality disorders.
Because
So-
that's where I go instantly is narcissism. Instantly.
See, I don't.
And it's not me either. I don't
That's
know.
Let's talk about that.
But what I'm saying is, don't confuse the word ego with personality disorders, right?
Because I do. I mean, instantly,
And
I
most
go
people
there.
do. So when I throw out that topic, ego,
I don't think it's personality.
it's easy to think ego negativity, right?
Yeah.
Versus
Well, okay, so when you talk about a sales personality, right? We in the realm that we're dealing in, a big sales personality that has a big ego. We use that word a lot, right?
okay,
He's got a big ego. He should be a salesperson. What are you talking about? Because
I
to
don't
me,
think that way. Do you still think that way?
absolutely, I do.
You
A
think
a
if someone
high-
has got a lot of ego, then they're
Look,
gonna be a good
A
salesperson?
high I has a lot of ego, and I think instantly, he's going to be a good salesperson. Man, he can bullshit his way through anything.
okay.
I-
So
I,
go ahead.
I think the opposite, right? Like, I think if you have a lot of ego, you got to learn how to shelve that before you can go out and have really good conversations and focus on like
Well,
what's best
okay.
for the current situation you're in.
I don't disagree with that. You're right, and that's the best practice to use it. I'm saying that most traditional salespeople out there, the people that we're running into every day, have a huge ego. They walk into a room, they're like, "Dude, I'm the party guy. Let's do shots on me," and listen to everything that I have to say. It's a big ego boost, right? Like they have to have that.
You're both right, and here's why.
Duh.
Right?
Hmm.
That's not ego. That's narcissism, right? So let me point this out because everybody has a strong ego here, right? We have a
We do.
strong self-worth,
That's true.
right? Well, here's how ego works. Ego allows you to take your wants and your desires, put them in a realistic context, and then overcome adversity. People with strong egos have good coping skills. They have good problem-solving skills. They can work around an issue that just crops up. That's where your ego says, here's the reality. Here's your want. Here's your reality. How do you match those two together? And how do you work this situation out? Because people with poor egos fall apart under pressure.
Do you think that goes into what you're talking about? Because I like what you just said. Because I feel like that describes me a little bit.
But it describes everybody here because we all
maybe.
solve problems.
Well,
But,
here's the deal. You wouldn't be sitting behind the microphone talking about how you sell and what's important to you and like really opening up about who you are and why it's important if you didn't have a little bit of ego saying that this
Okay.
is good
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay,
Right?
I agree with that. Is there a fine line between cocky and confident in ego? Right.
In a personality disorder,
Okay.
sure. That's why I'm gonna go back to when things are, if you're using or you have a psychosis that's your crutch to get through an issue, anger issues, right? That's not ego. That's anger issues, right? If you're intimidated, that's a natural reaction. But if you don't overcome it and it's fear that drives you, that's an issue with fear. That's not an issue with ego.
That's interesting because I think a lot of simplistic minds out there, myself included, because man, you're blowing my mind right now. But I think that when I look at people that have those issues with fear, and I think that guy, right? Let's go to like a scary movie, right? Running down the hallway, you get people that want to stick together. You want to get that guy that's like, hey, let's split up. I got my own, right? To me, that's ego. Like you've got a shit ton of confidence and cockiness in yourself that you're going to survive, and you want to split up because you don't want to be held back by those other people.
But isn't that you in that situation?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so yeah, yes. I mean, simplistically, yes. But
Clint
like,
only describes himself every time.
All the time. That's all
So
he
don't
wants to
get
talk about.
don't get confused out
No,
there.
I-
Himself every time. Just write it down. Put it on your mirror. It's there.
no doubt. But this is probably
No
my
doubt,
most
no doubt.
confusing topic that we're going to talk about as a high D is like ego. What is ego? Well, for you three, it's very different than what it is for me. It's confidence. Like when I see a guy with a high ego, I'm like, man, well, he's confident. He knows what he's doing. We should hire that guy.
Okay, but okay, so that's an admirable trait used in when you say, "Hey, he's very confident." Everybody says, "Oh my God, then that's the guy I want to meet." If you say he's a narcissistic asshole, well, nobody wants to meet
Or
that
he's
guy.
got a lot of
No,
ego. So
yeah.
you don't want to go to your
So
So how do you differentiate the two?
Okay, you don't. You differentiate personalities. Ego is your perception of your best self, right?
Mm.
It's definitely self.
So you're saying that. So if I had to
Man, we are deep in this stuff.
no, we are, but it's good because if we had to break this down in the DISC profile, the DISC, ego to every what you're saying is a little bit different. It's confidence, right?
Or
It's-
your self reality.
it's
Right?
your self reality. So if you're really confident in being compassion, and you have all of that Mother Teresa style stuff, you're really high ego s. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying
can be?
absolutely, because you can't tell me that Mother Teresa was a pussy.
No,
right?
she's not at all.
She was in Calcutta.
like she faced everybody.
Oh.
She faced everybody.
Exactly. She got vilified in certain arenas
100%.
because she had to decide who she could take in. She only had so
So-
many resources.
So what you're telling me is that Julius Caesar and Mother Teresa had ego.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
That's interesting, right?
She probably had more ego because she had less men around her to protect
Look,
her. Right? She had a bunch of cripples and kids who had no money.
John's rolling his eyes.
I think
but,
we need to have John
roll
say
my eyes.
something.
well, I think that's interesting though because ego to me lands in the high corner D in my mind.
Well, I think.
But now what you guys are saying is that that's not true. Every corner has its ego.
Right. I think the ego D over there needs to let John talk. Go ahead, John.
the thing
You
that
know
I'm
what
hearing
anyway.
is
No,
that
I'm
when I think about it is when, for lack of a better term, you think your shit doesn't stink, right? Like you can do no wrong, everything's gonna be perfect, and then it's never your fault, it's always someone else's, right?
Personality disorder, not ego.
he's right because that's cocky. What you're talking about is cocky.
But okay, so to me there's a lot of overlap there. So this was your topic, Al.
Yeah.
So how does this present as a salesperson? What do we need to be aware of? How do we make sure that we're thinking about it the right way so that way it's not limiting us?
I think what happens is if you'll quit excusing things to ego and start subdividing it into, well, not to say that a narcissistic person doesn't have a strong opinion of themselves and a strong reality, it's just kind of tilted the wrong direction. But I think if you're sitting back thinking just purely about ego and the fact that you have all these wants and desires and they come from different, things in your life, and you're trying to match where your ego should sit, it should sit in the best arena for coping with whatever your problems, whatever your issues, whatever your challenges are.
Well, that's interesting because I talk about a lot. Like as a high D, you need to check your ego and put it in the back seat, right? I say that a lot.
Yeah.
As a top tool for you, you have a very big ego as a high D, and you should use that because that's your tool, right? Like you're gonna use that ego to ask the hard questions. You're not scared to ask that stuff, but at some point you need to check that ego, put it in the back seat. So it's really interesting for me to hear from an I, S, and C what ego means to you guys.
But if your ego sits and says, my inner self wants to talk too much, tell too many stories, guess what? There's your ego checking your natural tendency to be you so that the reality is the best picture you can present. Because you said the same thing in a
pretty cool.
different way, right?
Yeah,
You
no,
said,
you're
I
right.
got to pull myself back because I sometimes get a little too headstrong. And maybe Nan says, sometimes I'm too quiet. And my ego
or maybe I
checks
have,
that.
or maybe I have too much compassion. I need to pull my compassion back a little bit, or maybe I need to pull
Only
my
a
facts
D would
back.
say too much
But,
compassion.
but hold on, but maybe like as a C, maybe I need to pull my facts back.
As you pointed your finger completely across my face, right? Look at this, Mr. Awareness there.
Ego, bitch.
Mhm.
No,
So anyway, there's where I want us to think about when you say ego.
So when we're in a sales conversation,
Mhm.
Doc, what do you think? You talk about ego-driven sales conversations because that's what's in my mind right now. Like when I sit across,
That's a good term.
when I'm across from a conference, at a conference table from a guy,
Mhm.
and he's talking about sales conversations with me. There's ego that's going to be a battle there, right? Maybe he's a high D and I'm a high D, and I say check my ego. What is your explanation of what's going on there?
Well, when you say check your ego, you're checking your personality traits that tend to
Overcome.
or push you a little too far that may rub that guy the wrong way.
Right. Finding what's appropriate.
Well, that's a good point, right? Because I happen to do this a lot, right? I sit across from a person that wants to tell me about how great his business is, and my first inclination is like, yeah, it's not that fucking great, bro. You only did 20 million last year. Not that great, right? But that's my natural inclination. That's my ego getting involved with the conversation, and what I want to do is I want to take that back, and I want to have a little bit of a Nan come into the conversation and say 20 million. You did 20 million.
Okay, because
Right.
that would be the best way to handle that situation, right?
Agreed.
So you're and the fact that you recognize that is your ego saying, "I would be better if I did it this way."
Agreed.
Right?
Yes.
And then and that's a strong ego.
Hmm.
That is the strength of ego.
So your argument that is kind of, if I'm paraphrasing, is that the way that we all think about ego needs to change.
It should change, yes.
So as a C, right, I love to be right, and I've exploded some relationships and some conversations and some deals because I'm willing to die on this hill, right? I was right, you were wrong. I will argue because I've got my facts, right? I've got these emails, I've got this chain, right? And this happened actually earlier this week,
I live on that hill too.
right? Yeah. And so, but the thing that I'm working on is that doesn't help me, right? It costs me nothing in the grand scheme of things to be like, you know what? I'm just going to take ownership of this. This is my fault, right? Even if it's not, because as we know, if we take it away from someone, then they're usually going to kind of step up and be like, oh, no, everything's okay, right? Whereas if we just respond with conflict, which is what I want to do because I need to be right, right? It's deep in there.
That's your id. That's your gut feeling saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's your inner child screaming, I want the ice cream.
Yeah.
Versus the ego that says, here's what's the best part of me dealing and controlling the situation.
Well, I love that analogy in developing your own ego. Like you're naturally, as a D, I, S, and C, you're given a natural ego to chase after certain things. For you, it's facts. For me, it's task, right? I want to get this job done. I don't give a shit what you think. For you, it's, hey, can we have fun? For you, it's, are you compassionate about this project? What you're kind of saying is that you can develop another ego a little bit. You can
Close.
slide a certain way.
I think your id is the D, the I, the S, and the C. Your ego is that next level up of conscious awareness of you, that id that sits as an I, that talks too much, that carries on too long, that's inappropriate.
I mean, that's pretty profound because I've honestly never thought that deep psychologically on that level.
And this is just a Freudian theory, and there's some other Erickson and some other guys that and this is scratching the surface, guys. This is romper room, psychoanalysis. But I think it's helpful if you kind of evaluate, okay, here's the why behind when I'm good, and sometimes it gets the best of me, and I step in it because I let my desires and my wants get in front of what could have been a better situation.
You're right, but there's so many times that I simply say check that ego, and I don't know.
Oh, it's just a cliche.
It is a cliche,
you're
but I say it all the time.
Check your narcissism. Check your personality.
But the thing is,
check the personality disorder.
For me personally, I know what that means.
Okay, but that's just words that you attach to a certain.
But I don't know that everybody out there listening to this knows exactly. When I say check your ego, maybe they don't know what that means, and you're giving some insight to a little bit broader term of what that is. Because to be honest with you, to me, before this conversation, checking your ego meant leave your cockiness at the door.
Mhm.
That's what it meant to me.
Okay.
And what I'm learning from you guys today is that that's not exactly what it means to you guys, or to the world, right?
Or in the literal definition of ego.
I was going to say, I think it's more.
I think most of the world feels the way you feel.
Okay.
I mean, so if you use that terminology, most people would clue in that you're talking about leaving, like you say, you know,
The attitude.
the attitude.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
well put.
Making it about me.
yeah,
Right?
Exactly.
leave that at the door.
So when I check my ego, I'm not going to go in going, oh man, I've had a really bad day. This is happening, or even say, oh man, I just killed an account to another account. I'm going to check that and listen to them, try to find out what is going on with them. Not, they don't need to hear what's going on with me. I don't think is that in agreement?
No, that's
Okay.
absolutely spot on.
that's
I didn't know
spot
if
on.
that
That
was
is.
different
That's
than what you
no.
were.
It is
you're-
spot on because it's so different than what I think of ego. But what you just said, check your ego for an S, that means something totally different than what it does for me as a D. But they both
But
accomplish the same things,
right,
right?
exactly.
Right. And
Mhm.
and it is the same thing in the big picture view of what ego is.
Right.
Because it's your tools in your tool chest. It's my tools in my tool chest.
And people that have strong egos are what the term you use. They're very self aware. They know what they're good at. They know that, and they don't beat themselves up about their faults. They recognize that they could be better at that, but they're just not the best. But there are other areas that they really balance that out with. Well, I'm really good at this.
Well, the thing is that, and I may say it 100 times, but I don't ever want any one person to try to differentiate their tools to somebody else's. So if you have tools in your toolbox and that's what gets you home and that's what gets you safe and that's what makes a sale, use those, but understand how to use those. And that ego, I mean, it plays a big part in all that, right?
Oh,
So if I'm an expert technically at one subject and I'm talking to somebody and I'm trying to make a sale, the one thing that I don't want to do in that situation is just overwhelm them with technical facts, right? That's my ego getting involved because I know more than you. I want to
no, that's your id getting involved, and your ego says, it's probably not a wise idea to make this guy look stupid.
Okay.
Right? My greater good would be to check my knowledge.
I mean, that's cool because
and the push that I want to put out there to let this guy talk, and then I can begin to lay stuff out to him in an appropriate way. Because you know how you want to run with scissors
I do,
sometimes.
man. I mean,
And the better thing with the stronger the ego sits back and says, my opportunity's going to come. Let's
Right.
hear this out.
It's the lost art of listening. You have to listen. I mean, I think that's so vital. We talk about it all the time, how important it is to listen.
I'll give you an example. And Daniel loved this, but I was in church on Sunday.
I do love that.
Yeah. So in church,
Why?
they were talking about
Because-
hell. But
Because
So they were talking
Just
about
a joke, guys.
hellfire
want
and
me to tell you
brimstone.
Oh, I
And
like that.
this guy was just talking about hell, right? And he was just like, "Man, this
Reality.
hell is this. Why would you ever want to go there?" And what's funny is a high D and ego, maybe a little bit, and cocky and confident and all this stuff. I leaned over to Jessica, my wife, and I said, "You know what? I kind of want to see it. I kind of want to."
guess what? Be careful
But
what you
look,
wish
no,
for.
no, you're right. But you're right. But at the same time, that's
Very
my
scary.
But
True.
what I told her afterwards on the way home was like that fits my personality to a T. Is that I want to see it. I want to see if I can beat it.
Mm.
Right? Where it's used to be a fearful thing, like don't ever go this way because there's better things out there. I look at it and I say, man, show me. I want to beat it.
Milton, better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven.
The thing is
Mhm.
the thing is though, guys, is I'm not right. That's just my natural inclination of when I hear that statement of you don't ever want to do this. I want to say, let's see it.
Do you think that's a D thing, or do you think that's a you thing?
Well, maybe we
Do you ever tell your children not to do something?
no. John, you got a good point because we've hit on this a couple times. Is that a Clint thing or a D thing?
Okay,
Clint?
when he says
It's
Clint, he's
extreme.
talking about personality disorder.
Maybe.
True.
When he's talking
true.
about
exactly
D,
right. Yeah.
when he's
Look,
talking about D thing, there's
I'm not saying me-
rational group of people that actually fit into that
I'm not
category.
saying me and Dexter don't have a lot in common, but we do. I'm just saying that
Oh, no.
sometimes there's questions that are posed to me, and I think, well, I think the majority of people think a certain way and they agree with you. I think the opposite way. Like, I want to face that confrontation. I want to face that chaos.
Okay.
I want to see if I can beat it. And
Whoa.
if I don't, then I failed trying.
But being a contrarian, though, it's a legitimate position
Sure.
to say, well, okay, you had something to
No,
say.
I'm going to let you finish your thought because I'm about to take us off track. I think maybe,
Okay.
but I'm curious.
Yeah, to think, just because you think differently from the person sitting across from you, that's usually an indication that you've got a pretty balanced and reasonable ego. You have your reasons, and they make sense, and they should make sense. And if the other person just disagrees or has a different opinion, it
Don't
doesn't.
be defensive.
Well,
don't be
it doesn't make
rude,
him right.
you know.
Doesn't make you wrong until you
Right.
figure that out.
That's the nugget, right? Is that you're not right and he's not right. You're not wrong and he's
But
not
somebody
wrong.
may be.
Somebody's right.
But at a certain point, there's a reasonable way to approach
Maybe.
that and figure that out.
I
But
agree
there's
with
so
that.
much nuance in between those 2 points. I think, right?
Expand
two
on that a
points?
little bit.
Right. So in the thing that we're talking about, right? You know, you're having a conversation and you guys are on counterpoints, right? And the thing that my mind jumps to is like a political conversation, right?
Well, I didn't want to go there. But
Yeah, I don't really want to either.
I
But
do.
I know you do. But you know, we're so polarized, right? That everyone's pushed to the sides,
Yeah.
right?
And
like,
you
no
pick
matter
a
what.
side,
Exactly, right? And then you got this commitment to
which is wrong.
well, you
right?
you have a commitment to consistency trigger, right? If you tell
Yeah.
one person that you're
This.
conservative,
Yeah.
then you got to pick up and carry everything that's part of what's currently a conservative, right? And so
And you may not
that's the
agree
thing.
with all this, right?
Absolutely, but
but you had to pick a side,
exactly.
and that happens in sales conversations all the time, right?
What do you mean by that?
I face this quite a bit, like in negotiations of a let's just say a project of a sales conversation. Well, we need you to do this. Well, I can't do that, and you instantly provoke this A and B side, this conservative liberal side of there's a split. Now there's a split down the table. There's a line drawn, and I have to either be on your side or I have to be on my side. When the fact is that that's not true.
Yeah, we can meet somewhere there in the
I
middle.
can meet somewhere in the middle. You like this, I like
To
that.
have success,
you
you
give
have
a-
to have mutual benefits. So
I agree, but I don't think a lot of people think that way, right?
Okay, but you're almost making it like it's 50-50 because if I looked at
But
you and
I-
Clint said, if you got 98% of what you wanted,
Is that not success?
I'm asking
I
you.
mean,
is
to
it
me,
not
to
you?
me, knowing what I know now, it is
Okay,
right.
But
to a lot of people, they get put off by the 2%.
okay, but the 2% may mean, oh, you've got to give up your firstborn.
You know
right?
what I call
or
that?
you know,
You know what I would say to that is check your fucking ego, which is
Well,
interesting, right?
to which side?
To give into the 2%. You got 98.
I understand, but if you are hanging, maybe the 2% is, weighs more than the
Well,
98%.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
absolutely. And this is
It's got to come in green. I
but it-
love everything but the green, and you're like, well, I can't do it but in green.
Look,
and
in
the guy
a-
says,
in
deal
a
breaker.
sales conversation. I run into this a lot. Like, okay, we need you to cut, let's just say $100,000 off the project. Look, man, I can do that, but you're going to cut scope. You're going to cut things that you asked for,
Mhm.
and now we can't provide those.
So give me the solution. You gave me the
Right.
problem.
Exactly.
Tell me what the solution is.
It's a great point, right? So if I tell you that I can't do A, I'm on B, you're on A, and I can't do any of that because you've set ultimatums, I think that's where a lot of salespeople fail, is that what you have as options to deliver is that, look, I can't do A. I can do C because of blah, blah, blah. And that's not free consulting. Look, that's not free consulting. That's
Let me stop you for just 1 second. There's where the strong ego says, I may not win this deal, but I know I can't do it that way. So I'm going to have to be okay. And my reality is this is slipping away. and I don't need to beg for it.
So do you dig for information after that? Do you dig questions?
You can.
Right.
You can.
So, like, I'm not going to win this because he's so set in his side. Do
Well,
I dig
now
for...
you've already made an assumption that you're not going to win it.
Okay.
I'm saying ego simply says, I'm going to be okay if I don't. Because you know the guy that just, oh my God, I got so close, and now he's just, he's going like this, and it's 2 weeks to get past the fact that the deal didn't come through.
Yeah.
Right? No, I think a strong ego says, didn't win that one. How would I be better next time? And you sit and you keep everything in the right proportion. You're upset. Maybe you're a little bitter. Maybe you're a little of everything, but you're not pushing towards a personality disorder on this. And I keep using that term, but I'm focusing in on the inappropriateness that we all sometimes get caught up in. And then you walk away and you go, I shouldn't have acted that way.
So what are some examples of that?
Harboring bitter feelings towards somebody that just had a different opinion for way too long for all the wrong reasons.
Okay.
Right? And blaming other people, putting your it's always somebody. Everything is your fault, guys. Everything is. And when you learn that, it gets a whole lot easier.
Do you think you can build a unified ego amongst you and the person that you're trying to sell
I
to?
absolutely think you can, and that's a great observation. Because when egos match up, you're like, man, that's a normal, cool dude sitting up there. I don't actually agree with him, but man, I like his style in delivering it.
Again, it's identifying what is your ego.
So we talk about a lot, like identifying personalities and body language, and and we talk about that a lot, and that's really important. But egos is one of those things that's a psychological backseat, right? That we don't think about a lot. But if you can unify your goal, is that not unifying an ego?
Have you not remembered some of our after dinners after this?
Oh, agreed.
Where you wake up calling going, I think I got excommunicated, and we all laugh because we have strong egos. But we all still really get along, and there's a lot of love at the table. And
I think that's the coolest part about this whole. When I go out and I talk about this podcast, I think that's one of the most informational things that I can talk about is that we have a DISC. If you don't know anything about DISC, just think about four corners of the opposite universes, right? Think about that because that's what we are.
Very high ego,
right? DISC is just so far, but we all deal in these day-to-day sales conversations with like people, right? So you deal with it as an I deal with it as a D, an S, and a C. But what you're saying is pretty profound in my book because what you're saying is that we can come together on an ego level, not just a fact-based or not just an emotional level, but an ego level. That's big for me, right? So if I see somebody across from me that has a huge ego and he thinks that he is only right? His way or the highway. That's my way, right? I think that way. I naturally think that way as a high D. But if that guy thinks that way and I can kind of bring him to my level and I can bring a little bit of my level to him and we talk about this unified ego and we can get a project done together, that's partnerships. That's what we're trying to do as salespeople. That is exactly what we're always trying to do.
Well, I think what you just explained was normalizing the behavior, right? So that it feels normal to sit and communicate and be respectful of that behavior and say, okay, I understand this.
John, what do you think about that? Normalizing behavior. I mean, literally
just changing your frame of reference. I think if you're just like, oh, go ahead. That wasn't the question, but one thing I was thinking with what y'all are saying. So you take a picture. So someone takes a picture of us. Paul takes a picture of us. Then he hands us the picture. The first person you're going to look at, is it me? Is it Clint? No, it's you.
Do we have our shirts on or off?
So I'm just saying, we all really think first about ourselves.
Sure.
But we really need to create. You can still have ego, but incorporate someone else in that.
Okay, but take a picture of you with your family. And what do you look at first?
Me.
My baby.
Okay.
Me.
Okay. You sure about that?
I promise you.
Well, he probably does. Do you? You don't.
Hold
No,
on.
I'm not sounding shitty. I'm
Clint,
just
I've
I'm
got
giving,
somebody you got to talk
Look,
to
man.
after this. I'll pay
Anybody
for
have
it.
a
It's all
number?
good, man. There's no charge to you.
Look,
Just,
if you-
got to sit
if-
there for about 45
if
minutes.
you
and
if you
talk.
don't know me for more than a few minutes, you ask, I tell, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the honest answer. And if you take a picture of me and my family and my kiddos, at a park having fun, I'm going to look at how I look. I'm sorry, that's honesty. Spite me
Perfect.
for being honest, but
No, I'm not.
but
I'm
the-
just chuckling.
No.
no, I know. But
Yeah.
the thing is that explains my personality very well, right?
Right.
That explains my ego very well.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at me.
Well, look, you didn't get mad whenever I just chuckled about that.
No,
right?
I didn't. No, I
Yeah,
don't. I
you're
don't
just
give a
like,
shit.
Well, okay,
But I don't.
and I'm okay with that.
And I don't care because I'm being honest, right?
agree.
And that's one of those things where it's like in a sales conversation, if you're being honest and you're really laying your your company out on the line, and you're being honest about what you can and can't do, and you're telling them why should you ever look backwards, right? Why should you ever think about like, oh, I'm just being cocky? Because I think the people that think they're being cocky is people saying things that they can't do. And that happens a lot in sales conversations, right? You say, oh, yeah, we're the guy. Give me a call. I'll do that. Give me a call. I'm your guy. The fact is that sometimes you're not that guy.
Yeah, if you're walking around, then you're lying.
But
you're
but a
just-
lot of people do that,
you're-
Doc.
Yeah. Oh no, I understand. But
So
we're not. We don't want the people we're talking to be that guy.
it's really it's a I argue it all the time. I would much rather sit in front of a jury on a courtroom and somebody asks me 1,000 questions and I can answer them honestly, because through the entire sales conversation and through the entire operations side of it, I was honest. It may be harsh, it may be not what you like to hear, but it was honest. So then when I'm sitting in front of a jury and I say, yeah, I said that. Yeah, I did this. Yeah, I did that. And I'm honest, that's a whole lot easier conversation to have than trying to backpedal, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's a good ego.
Absolutely. Honesty, I think, is one of the trademarks. Now,
Mm.
I will go that there's another thing called superego, and that's your morals, your the difference between right and wrong and where you sit. A lot of that comes from your family background and the environment you were raised in, because right and wrong is discerned by social norms and some of the things that you saw as you developed from being a child. What you're born with is your id, right? Your inner child, right? You're just this bundle of, I got to poop, I need to eat, I cry, and my parents take care of me. As you begin to recognize self, oh, this is me, there is your ego.
You create your own opinions.
Well, it's your ego as your wants and desires, and I'll have chocolate ice cream instead of strawberry, and I'll do this, and this.
Dad says I like chocolate, but I really like strawberry.
And when Dad says we go to church and we believe in Jesus and this is right, and we stop on red and we go on green, there's the super ego that says, here's how my morals, my those kind of things.
So, Albert,
Mhm.
so what you're making me think of, my mother used to always say what Clint said a few minutes ago. She would say to someone, to me, she'll say, well, your hair just looks really bad. And I'm like, well, gosh, that was kind of rude. And she's like, well, I'm just telling you the truth. And so she always thought, if I'm telling you the truth, and so her ego, to me, never grew up. It was just like her id was just always
Well,
there.
no,
Yeah, sure.
okay,
But there's tact.
And that's inappropriate.
There's tact.
well, and there are people that are insensitive, right? That's a personality disorder. All right, those are they're personality traits that just are outside of what really should be normal.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the coolest things about being an honest person is that you can ask questions to somebody that you don't know for 5 seconds, and you're asking those questions for a reason. As salespeople, that's what we should be doing, right? In our process, we should be asking tough questions to really dig home why we're doing this project, why they want to do that project. It doesn't matter if you're in medical sales or CRM or construction. You're digging for the reason why we're doing this stuff. You can ask those tough questions. Nan, to your point of like being really honest.
So you have a filter still? If you
Well, the point of it is that you have to understand communication styles, right? So if I'm dealing with a super C, right, a high corner C, I know that guy deals in facts, and I've recognized that from the first 2 minutes I've talked to him. The last thing I want to do is talk about compassion, and I want to talk about, hey, if you give me this job, we're going to go out and have a blast at the Texas Rangers games on Tuesday. That's not going to resonate with him, you know.
Okay.
But if I notice that guy is a super S, right? He's a high corner S. He's a Mother Teresa type, and I talk about compassion and love, and like, hey, I love this project because I'm really compassionate about getting this stuff done. That resonates with that guy. That guy understands what I'm talking about. That's communication styles. You're not saying anything different. It's just understanding your ego based with hard facts, also based with communication styles. That's why I always say DISC is super important in anything that you do. And it's not, DISC is not a home run, right? But what it does is it gets you to understand who you are and who the person across from you is, and you get to communicate in a similar style. That's all that we're trying to talk about. So when you talk about ego, which is this podcast, this whole episode is about ego. Take your ego and communicate that person across from the table from you in the communication style that they're able to deal with.
Agreed.
Yeah.
My God, John, look at all
John.
those amazing zeros behind that number, and that spreadsheet is just off the chain.
So I have a question then. So let's say you start out in sales and you're just chasing money, right? You're not super concerned about a great fit. You just want to bring in some business because you got to pay the bills, or your boss is all over you and stuff like that.
You're not in sales.
What do you mean?
Agreed.
You're not in sales. You're just not. If that's your goal.
Well,
No,
that's not their goal. That's
but-
just where they are.
Well, but here's the deal.
I'm shutting you down for a reason, because I think a lot of people are out there, right? They take a sales position. They think, oh, man, I got to go kill it. I got to go out there today and I got to find 200 prospects and I got to close 20
Okay.
of them.
So
Right.
I agree that that's not where people should be, but I'm saying that like this is where the majority of people start,
Agreed.
especially if you're starting your own thing,
Yep.
right? You're going to spin up a business and start like going and talking to people. You don't even know what a bad fit is versus a good fit, so you don't really qualify anything. You're just chasing money. So at some point, though, I think your principle changes away from anyone who's willing to pay me as a good client to, oh, now I actually know what a good client is, and now we got to have conversations so that way we can qualify around that thing, because I'm not going to just chase the money anymore.
Agreed. But what a nugget this is to realize that you can develop good customers before you chase the money. And the nugget is that you can literally develop good clients. You can do that right now. Right, absolutely right now. Like, you don't have to go chase this money that you're talking about. I know that's what most people do, and I know that, hey man, I've done it. We've all done it, right?
Yeah.
We've all set up here. We've all went out into the day-to-day world and said, you know what, I gotta pay the bills. So therefore,
please buy
yeah, please buy something.
anything.
But I'm going to tell you, like I did 12 episodes ago, the day you realize that good, valued customers are your target and you move forward on those good, valued people, you will close more. You will just close more. You just will. If your process is refined, you'll close more. And that money, it'll come secondhand.
You need to be assured of yourself, though. So that's why ego is really important.
Sure.
You cannot go in there shaking in your boots.
Well, you can, but be okay with it and say, I'm really new and I'm really nervous and I've got to figure out a way to get past this, or, push this down just a little bit, and understand that you're just dealing with your own emotions, and don't let it wreck you.
Don't mind.
That we've all faced challenges and
So-
things that we didn't do very well.
Is ego just awareness? Is that what you're saying?
Not-
I'm still kind of stuck on this whole idea that
It's
that
tough.
everything I kind of define as ego
Mhm.
is not really ego, right? So I've been pretty quiet so far on this episode because I'm trying to like think through this thing, right? Because to me, most gut-driven people, I's and D's, have got ego, right? Because it's just like you look at the situation, you're like, you know what, I can be the positive impact on the situation. I'm gonna go get it, right? You start a business, you do something else.
But you say the same thing.
I said the same thing.
You say exactly those words.
Mm-mm.
How not? How, I mean,
Oh, I
tell
totally
me why
think
you
he
don't.
is.
Not out of the box though, right? I mean,
Well,
so
wait a second.
if I
So out of the box, how are you any different than me? If we walk through the door out of the box, how are you
I
different?
got a better question. What does ego mean to you?
well, that's the thing that I've been stewing on and thinking about, right? Because to me, ego is it's a mixture of having confidence, and it's a mixture of also just thinking, like I said earlier, that your shit doesn't stink, right? And you can go too far with that, but at some level, it's healthy, right? You gotta take pride in what you do and how your company fulfills and how you actually like work with your clients, or else you can't go have conversations, right? If you don't believe in the product or service that you're selling,
People
like-
have conversations every day and don't have any faith or confidence in anything. It's all bullshit.
So it sounds to me, if I had to break that down a little bit, ego to you is confidence. Because I'm not saying that I wouldn't
it's
agree
too
with
much
that.
confidence, though. I think,
Well,
right?
but you're vilifying. And what? Okay, so
Right,
you and I.
and as I said a moment ago, I set this expectation
Yeah.
that to me, the like Clint was talking about, like ego is cockiness, right?
So okay, you and I open the same door, go in, sit and do a sales call, and we are both bringing our egos in there and our personalities, C and an I,
Mhm.
and there's a conversation about budget. And you reach in and pull out a stack of data that says, let me tell you how I justify budget, right?
Mhm.
And you're feeling very comfortable because you've got this. And you roll through your presentation, and I come in and they say budget, and I look up and very confidently go, the numbers really matter? We're talking satisfaction here.
I mean, it's right on point.
So both of our egos are apropos for the individuals that we are with the resources that we have, because we're coping with the stress of how do I deal with budget?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
I'm marinating on that.
no, I know you
So,
are.
are you saying my earlier story about the negative ego, where you're just whining and it's you can't get out?
Personality disorder.
You're saying that's not
Can I,
ego.
can I?
Personality disorder. Hold on, because you have said this term,
A
right?
million times.
It's a heavy term,
Yeah.
right? Because like I hear that and I'm thinking like, oh, you got to go to the ward.
People,
Well,
a lot of
right?
people should go on any freeway and see how many
Well,
people need to go to the ward.
But Nan brings up a pretty good point of negative ego versus positive ego.
Right. So, how
right?
does that not work in your ego world?
Okay, I think when you define ego, it's a poor concept of your reality.
A poor concept of your.
Okay, it's like the child that's throwing the fit. You're like, hey, I can't buy you everything.
So your child
right?
state.
You know, and you're not, your coping skills stink, right? And we saw that last night. Poor coping skills. No reason for this behavior.
Not
You're
on
just
either
you're
one of
just
us, it was
lashing
someone
out,
else.
right? It's it's the adult temper tantrum. It's the adult.
Okay, so you're saying, okay, identify. Is this? So you're saying that's ego.
No, I say that's
That's a
poor ego.
personality.
That's a bad a small ego. You're just letting your gut desires rule the day, and your
So is
people
my
with
definition
because we
of
said strong egos are people who say, okay, here's my challenge. I got to control myself. I got to control the environment, and then I got to come out as a winner at the end of the day. I got to convince this guy that he should buy from me. I got to convince them that I'm the right fit. I got to convince them whatever that may be.
So before we get to the throwdown section, because I know Paul is ready to ring the bell. If you're new to
just 'cause
this,
he likes to.
right? We just spent an hour essentially reframing the definition of ego, right? Kind of.
But I don't think that was a bad thing. That was
No, I'm not saying it was, but for the person who's listening to this,
For the
right?
layman.
Well, I'm feeling pretty layman right now, honestly, right? But you know, for the person out on the field, right, who's listened to all of our episodes, if you have, thank you very much. What do you want them to take away from this topic? Like what's the thing that they're supposed to do tomorrow that's going to make them better?
But I think ego is very self-defined. That's what I'm getting out of this entire episode. Me personally, I mean, if I had a notebook in front of me, which I don't, wish I did, because I'd write some shit down. But listen, ego is very self-defined. Ego is different in each and every one of us. That's what I'm gathering out of this episode.
And,
Ego-
and is that based upon DIS and C?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. So
Well, they all bring it in a different way.
So my ego as a C is facts and logic and figures and data.
and that's your normal state.
I think that's a blanket statement for a C. I do. I think a blanket statement for a D is that you're cocky and you're overconfident, and that's your ego. I think for an I is that you think everybody likes you, but they don't. That's your ego. I think that for don't talk, Al. I think for
Oh, now I have to.
but I think for an S,
Strong ego coming out.
but I think for an S, what I'm getting out of this is that a strong ego would be that you're over compassionate. Maybe not everybody is. So when I say things like check your ego, check those strong points, right?
What is the opposite of ego?
The opposite of ego?
God damn it.
You went to church,
Do
man.
not use-
yeah,
You are
that did you a whole
cursing
lot of good.
yourself.
We only
Using
have
the Lord's
we
name
only have
again.
11 minutes,
Okay.
man.
All
Should
right.
should we?
I want to know though.
I don't know that anyone has
Part-
an answer for that. I think it's
part-
just a
part
negative
two.
ego, right?
Is it humility?
But to be honest with you,
That's
like,
a good question.
look,
Is it humility?
you're right. It may be.
You guys are
humility.
still defining this in the
I
wrong
know.
way.
No, but it's really interesting because I think we all have our own ego. I think
As
that
we
we all.
should.
You're right,
and it should really be that normal
right, Dr.
factor
Dan.
But
that makes us the great
look.
individuals that we are.
But look, once again, self-reflection, self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Realize what your ego is. I don't look at it. Here's what I've got out of today. I still to this day don't know what ego is.
you got
I
you
don't.
got,
I
you got
just
homework,
don't. I
man,
just
and
don't.
all of you do. You have
Look,
homework.
You
Go-
can look
go
up
think
all.
about it.
You can look up the Webster Dictionary version. Doc read it off. I still don't know. What I think it is it's my strong suits over projected.
Everybody's gonna be out there
I
googling
know.
ego.
No, I get it.
We're
I
gonna have
get
to
it.
revisit.
And there's a lot of good stuff out there,
But
guys. Go check it out.
How quickly can we spin up a website about ego that just gets all this traffic? You know,
They're already out there.
Man, it's
all right.
It's a good-
Freud's
it's a good
been around
topic.
for a long time.
All right.
Check him out.
Let's
Yeah,
go to
it's
the
amazing.
Throwdown.
yeah.
All right. So I guess Al is going to speak authoritatively, and we're going to guess at it. So
No, I mean-
let's start
We're
with
gonna just
Clint.
say,
As
must
a
be
as
randomness.
as a D, I would tell you to check your ego, but that doesn't work out real well.
No, that's probably good.
No, I look. I think that in my definition from a high D is that ego is that those things in your toolbox that make you what you are. Those able to ask the honest questions without any care. You don't care, right? You just don't give a shit, right? But be careful. And I think that's where ego comes involved is that you think you're better than somebody, right? You're going to ask this because you're trying to win. Ask the questions in a discovery sort of way, right? That's where that check the ego comes in my mind. That's what checking the ego means is don't ask because you're being manipulative and deliberate. Ask it in a discovery way because the rest of these three up here on this panel, that's what they're doing. And it works, right? You're trying to gain information. We're always trying to gain information as salespeople. Ask in a discovery sort of way and not a deliberative, egotistic way.
Okay. Al?
Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Rewind, capture it.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said up here today. I think ego, though.
Deeper, can you?
Hold on. Let me throw down one talk.
I think that ego is that portion of yourself that keeps you as normal and as comfortable in your own skin and allows you to really use the coping skills you should have. When you have a strong one, you've got it. You know you can work through things and you're okay if they don't work out. And it keeps you from being batshit crazy. As long as it's strong enough.
Okay. Nanette?
C.S. Lewis, I love
CS
said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. And that's what I think of ego, which might be completely off base, but I'm going to take my ego of confidence. I think it's confidence. And I'm going to set it aside and try to think more of what my client wants.
I'm still reeling here. Like I'm gonna be up all night, like
It's tough, right?
researching and reading.
It's not an easy topic.
So I'm going to revert back to like what I think about is ego, right? Is making it about you. And I think I know that apparently that's the wrong definition of it, but like that's just still what I think about at a gut level, you know.
Sure.
And so I think that some of it is healthy. You know, you got to be confident in what you do and how you deliver, in my opinion. But you got to balance that with the idea of you got to do what's right for the other person who's sitting across from you, right? So for me, I've spent a lot of time judging people negatively for making what I feel like are dumb decisions, right? Like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. You're stupid, right? I've spent a lot of time in my head doing that, you know? And honestly, whenever you and I were talking about working together in the very beginning, we're sitting in a bar and you're like, you know, what do you think about sales? And this is before any of us knew any of this stuff, right? This is a long time ago. And I said, I'm going to know more than anybody else is, right? And you were like, okay, cool, I got a spot, right? And to me, that is ego. Like that idea that by knowing more, I'm going to be better than someone else.
Do you think ego is self-worth?
Absolutely.
I'm trying to compile all this together. I'm
Self.
learning here,
I think
folks.
ego is self.
I'm so confused, if I'm being really honest.
Well, hopefully everybody else is, and hopefully if you're out there and you're like, "Oh my God, I got so many questions," that's what we're hoping for.
If you got a
right?
PhD, please chime in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Call in
there
right
are gonna
now.
be some guys who are gonna maybe
Gonna slam
put
us.
some dings in. We're scratching the surface. It goes a whole lot deeper than that. This came from Sigmund Freud, and it's I see a lot of legitimacy in it. And if you want to know more, I know we're on the countdown here. Call John Hill because he'll know the answer.
Oh, I will by the time this comes out. That's for
He'll
sure.
know. He'll know where you should reference it. What book you should get it from.
But you know,
Speaking of book, where is our book guy?
Oh yeah, so we did a book giveaway as part of the
yeah.
launch,
What's going
right?
on with that? Good for you.
Great package.
He's here in town, right? And so we invited him out to a show. We have not been able to coordinate like when he's available to like actually come hang out, but he says that he wants to come hang out and watch a taping and hang out and have a kick-ass dinner with us because that's
Sure.
what we do after these episodes. So yeah, so hopefully he'll be here soon.
Oh.
and I'm gonna tell you guys right now, I've had some of the best conversations after these podcasts with people calling in, emailing. I mean, guys, you're talking about even the most simplistic topic that you could think of. I walk into a conference room or I walk into a gatekeeper and this is what I ran into. How do you deal with that? Like I've had those conversations with people and I learn as much from you as you are from me. No doubt.
Yeah. So in those, if you're listening to this and you're having some situations that you're stuck on or having problems with or something else, don't just call Clint, right? Send us an email.
You
Hit
should.
us up on social media. We'll talk about it on the show, right?
Because I'll answer them.
We have a couple of topics coming up from the field, and
Yeah.
and
They're
we love that
fantastic.
stuff, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
and wrapping up, right? Follow us on social media. Everything is at Sales Throwdown, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're on YouTube, so if you're watching this and you're looking at our sweet cups, that's
Yeah.
gonna be awesome. Hashtag
Hashtag
TMC.
TMD.
And yeah, share this with someone else, right? If you can't figure out the definition of ego, welcome to the party because I'm there with you. But you know, there's so much wrapped up in this thing, right? There's multiple layers, and you got to figure out yourself, and like it starts there,
Yeah.
right? If you're running around thinking, well, it's their fault and stuff like that, you're probably wrong, right? You got to take a second, kind of
Let's
figure
talk
out.
about it.
We don't have time today, man. That's
No,
part two.
I get that, but I'm saying email us, contact us,
Absolutely.
social media. Let's talk about it because, look, you might get a different perspective that helps you push through that final
Absolutely.
thing.
Please
right?
reach out, right? It's hard enough. You don't have to be out there all by yourself, right? That's kind of why we're here.
Love it.
All right, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.